Alright, we are back with a new video, and we are continuing with this series of reviewing new episodes of Owl House. And today we got Them's the Breaks Kid, which was good. So basically, this episode exists as a way of providing some backstory on how Eda met Rain, which is something, I guess. I mean, there's plenty to be had with telling that story, though the way it's set up in this episode is a bit weird. Essentially, it's Luce trying stuff to rebuild the portal because she misses her mom, and then Eda just walks in and it's like, let me tell you a story. I guess that's a way of helping Luce keep her mind elsewhere, as the whole portal business has apparently been eating up so much of her time and space of mind. But to be honest, I think they could have found a better setup for all this. The more typical way would be either Luce exploring the house and stumbling upon some memento or letter, prompting curiosity, or perhaps she's thinking of doing something special for Amity, prompting her to go to Eda for ideas. But this episode doesn't seem to try that hard. Though, I mean, would it have really been better if it did do those things? Maybe. Anywho, we get to the backstory, and despite it opening with young Eda and Lilith together, the bulk of the episode is about Eda. We also get a glimpse at young Odalia and Olador, and it seems like they were once friends with Darius, which is something, I guess. But then we see Faust, the old principal at Hexside, who is a bit of a stickler. I like how his strictness is painted in a comical light, and they even seem to poke fun at how short sighted his discipline is, with him expelling top students for meaningless stuff, and Vice Principal Bump pointing out how they may not even have a graduating class if they keep expelling students. But despite kicking out top students, Faust admits that Eda hasn't been expelled yet, because she's apparently been such a rule breaker that she has taught him the depravity of children, which is something. But now he was thinking of expelling her for good, except Bum tries to get him to see the possibility of redemption, prompting him to send her to some program that schools use to prop up their prestige or whatever. And to add some stakes, if she fails to get a ribbon, not only will she be expelled, but Faust would also fire Bump, which is something. So she gets to the program, which is being run by Tara, which is interesting. And the tasks are your usual skill based stuff. There's a trust task, a strength task, a magic task, and others. For the most part, E doesn't take it super seriously, and it doesn't go super well. And when she takes a break, that's when she encounters Rain. Now, something I haven't mentioned up to this point is that at least for Eda and Rain, they got different voice actors to play their younger counterparts in this episode. And for Rain, they got another non-binary actor to voice them as a teenager. Adult Rain is also voiced by a non-binary actor, by the way. And I couldn't help but notice how younger Rain has longer hair and a feminine sounding voice in this flashback, suggesting they would later have a transition to match their identity. I found that interesting, and I think the audience will appreciate this addition to the show's LGBT representation. So, whatever, the two of them hit it off and they decide to work together on the different tasks. You see, Rain has been going to this program for years and knows all the tricks, but the reason they keep going back is because they attend a fancy magic school that's more expensive than Hexside, and completing the program allows them to get a scholarship. And considering Eda wants to complete the program to avoid being separated from Lilith, Rain decides to be a good friend and help her out. So they do pretty well, and it seems like they're on track to get their ribbons. That is, until Tara decides that the program has devolved into a paper mill, handing out participation trophies. So she decides to make things more interesting by dividing everyone into teams, Coven Heads, and Wilds. And the Coven Heads have to capture the Wilds, while the Wilds have to put on a magic show, essentially. Now, what's interesting here is that Eda is put on the Coven Head team, while Rain is put on the Wild team, which is ironic considering how they turn out later in life. So whatever, the game happens, but Eda doesn't feel like capturing Rain after how nice they were to her. Eventually, Rain is the last remaining Wild, and we see the other heads try to capture them, only for Eda to get in their way. Before long, Tara pushes everyone aside and basically forces Eda to face off against Rain. And you think this would be the part where the two of them would turn on each other or have some dumb fight, but instead they both agree that the whole competition is stupid and they try to assault Tara for some reason, which is just weird. So anywho, Tara's like, no one gets a ribbon, and it seems like Eda and Rain just screwed themselves. But despite trying to assault her, Tara is actually impressed by them, or at least with Eda, and she agrees to send in a good word for her to Faust and for Bump, and thus both Eda and Bump get to stay at Hexside. Oh, and Rain decides to transfer to Hexside too because it just so happens they want to transfer away, and it all works out, I guess. Admittedly, that kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, I like to think that Eda inspired some rebellious spirit in them, prompting them to want to reassess and get closer to Eda. But on the flip side, it seems like the last few days did a number on Lilith, who was barely in the episode, as she's now much too focused on her studies to give Eda the time of day. Again, kind of a weird development, but whatever. Oh, and Rain introduces Eda to apple blood, which is moderately amusing in my opinion. So whatever, we cut back to the present where we find Luz sleeping, being she learned nothing, and making this episode 100% pointless. Nah, just kidding. It's clear this was Eda's attempt to take Luz's mind off the portal business, and at least Luz was paying attention at one point given she made a drawing of Eda and Rain together. And then it cuts to Rain, where Tara is once again feeding them that weird tea that I guess is supposed to brainwash them. But then it's revealed that Rain never really stopped caring about Eda, how they encounter on Folly at the Coven Day Parade was just a way to keeping her safe, and how they're secretly working to save the day. So I guess that's the reason we got this episode here? I don't know. On the whole, this was a fine episode. I mean, on its own, the story of how Eda and Rain met is pretty fruitful, and I'm glad this episode didn't try to draw some dumb rip between the two on their first encounter to give the story some conflict. It seems like the two of them met and genuinely grew attached to each other in a natural way. Plus, I found some of the real world parallels to child rearing in the education system mildly amusing, like the consequences of Faust's disciplinary measures and the fact that the program is designed more as a way for parents to give their kids accolades and credentials than as an actual program designed to challenge them, which Tara mocks. So there's plenty of fun to be had here. Even so, I think the episode could have set up the story a bit better, like giving Eda a better excuse to be telling Luz all this, as well as some minor things. But on the whole, this was still a fine episode. Now, in terms of placement, I don't have a definitive spot for it yet, though middle of the pack sounds about right. Probably around the same level as The Intruder and I Was a Teenage Abomination, but again, all these are subject to reassessment as the series goes on. So that'll do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps with the channel. I'll be back next week to talk about the next episode, and I do plan to come out with some other videos for other shows soon, so stay tuned for that. But for now, that is the video. See ya.